Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is another video by Mr. Sooner. This one is a new one. I'm going to do a little talk on MMA. I told y'all before that my channel isn't going to be just about Oklahoma football. I'm going to talk NFL, a little bit of everything, baseball, NBA, and some MMA. I do love the MMA fight game. I've been following it for a long time. So what we have tonight, the preview I'm doing, it is for UFC 246, McGregor versus Donald Cowboy Cerrone. There's also the co-main event, Holly Holm versus Raquel Pennington. I think both these fights are going to be really good. I'm going to just do a brief one on the Holly Holm Pennington fight. Now, Holly Holm burst onto the scene. If you guys remember by the shocking upset of Ronda Rousey in Australia for the Bantamweight Championship, that was the first loss that Ronda Rousey had in the UFC. She was a juggernaut. She was beating people. She was the Mike Tyson of the UFC. She was beating people, within the first round. She did have a couple fights that went past the first round, but for the most part, she was a terror. She was submitting people. She really wasn't known as a knockout artist per se. She was very well, into submissions. She's an ex judo Olympian. Her mother was a judo Olympian also, so she, well versed in submission attempts and attacks. But Holly Holm came in, a decided underdog, obviously. Holly Holm is a well established world class female boxer, maybe one of the greatest female boxers of all time. She was definitely a striker. She's not so much known for her takedowns or submissions. So that was an interesting matchup. Like I said, that put Holly Holm on the map. A lot of people had big expectations for Holly Holm, being the first woman to beat Ronda Rousey. I know I did. I thought, wow, that in itself was an amazing feat. After that, she did fight Miesha Tate for the championship in her first defense, and she lost. And, Miesha Tate, she's an extraordinary fighter herself. She fought Ronda Rousey a couple times, and she could have won one of those. I think she had a submission attempt on Ronda, and Ronda broke through. Obviously, ended up beating her. So Holly Holm, after that win, I don't know what happened, but she had a downhill slide. She did win a couple fights after that. Her current record is 2-5 after the Ronda Rousey fight. She just kind of had a bad string of luck in some fights. She's fought Amanda Nunes for the championship. She fought Justina Chris Cyborg. If I'm not mistaken, it was the featherweight championship. She lost, obviously both of those fights. And I think, she's a boxer. She has worked on her takedowns, but I think she got exposed in some of those fights. Now, like I said, she's a good fighter. Don't get me wrong. She's well skilled, but yeah, the last 7 fights after the Ronda Rousey fight just live up to expectations where a lot of people thought she would. Now, her opponent tonight, Raquel Pennington, she's got a lot of the same style, stylistically. You know, she's a striker, a boxer, just like Holly Holm. So that's going to be interesting because they're both amazing strikers. They do have some good takedown game, but I think they're more known for their striking capabilities. So like I said, that's going to be an interesting matchup. Now, these two did fight in 2015, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, they did fight in 2015. Holly Holm won by split decision. It was UFC 184. So they do have a history. Like I said, it was a split decision. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how these two fight tonight. Being the second time, they know each other. They know each other's strengths and weaknesses. What has the other done to be prepared or better prepared? So, like I said, that's going to be an interesting fight at bantamweight, women's bantamweight. That's the co-main event. But the big fight is going to be the McGregor Cowboy Cerrone fight. This is, to me, this is like a Christmas gift. This is a fight I've been wanting to see. I think a lot of other UFC fans have wanted to see for a long time. It is at welterweight. My initial thoughts on this fight is, man, what is McGregor going to look like? McGregor's had a long layoff. He hasn't fought in quite a while since the Khabib fight. He's really, he's done what he set out to do. He's a multiple champion in the UFC, 2-time, also an interim championship. He was, if I'm not mistaken, the 4th champ. That's, what they call it, to win double titles. I could be wrong on that, and don't quote me. But I know he's a former double champ at 2 different weight classes. So he's an amazing fighter. I like McGregor. I think some of his actions have been kind of crazy. Some of the stuff outside of the octagon he's done. He fought Floyd Mayweather. That was an interesting fight. And I think he did really good for a little while, but at the same time, Floyd Mayweather, I argued with a couple of people. I think Floyd Mayweather was playing with him, a little cat and mouse game. And obviously he beat McGregor in the boxing ring. Now, getting back to the MMA, I don't know if McGregor's going to have a lot of rust. I know he trains. His cardio is amazing. Now, he does tend to, if he goes into later rounds, he does kind of slow down. In that first Nate Diaz fight, the one that he lost, when he got choked out by rear naked choke, he did show some chinks in his cardio. I noticed, he there towards the end, he was having a tough time. Nate Diaz, he's a brawler. And he's got amazing cardio. He knows how to fight, he knows how to strike. He knows how to submit people. And he's kind of one of those underestimated, he's going to go out there and he's going to lose some fights, but he's going to go out there and he's going to let you know he's there, for sure. He's going to beat you down. Even if you might win, you're going to wake up the next morning fighting him, knowing you're in a war. So basically, the tail of the tape, you've got Connor McGregor. He's 5'9" with a 74-inch reach. His record is 21-4. He's had 11 fights in the UFC. He's 9-2. His key wins are Max Holloway, Jose Aldo, and Eddie Alvarez. The Jose Aldo one, that was a shocking one to me. Not that I didn't think McGregor could win, but it was the way he won, how he knocked Jose out. That was an amazing win for him. Now his two key losses were Nate Diaz and Khabib. Those are his only two losses. The interesting thing is those two losses came by submission. Khabib was a neck crank, and like I said, Nate Diaz was a rear naked choke. So he does have an issue, it seems like. Like I said, he's only lost twice, so it's not bad, but he does have an issue with the submission. Now he does fight southpaw, so that could be a problem for Cowboy. But let's be real, people. Cowboy has fought any and everybody in the UFC. His record speaks for itself. I want to say this is either his 50th or his 51st. I think it's his 51st fight because he had a no contest overall. He stands at 6'1". He's got a 72-inch reach. He's 36-13 with one no contest. Overall, his record in the UFC is 22-11, 33 fights, which is amazing. His longevity is just ridiculous. I believe Connor and Cowboy, they're both going to be first round, first ballot Hall of Famers in the UFC. I have no doubt about that. The only thing that eludes Cowboy is that belt, that strap. He hasn't got, a championship in the UFC. He's had multiple opportunities to win championships. They've just eluded him. But he's a hell of a fighter. Like I said, his longevity is just ridiculous. And he's a fighter that you don't ever want to estimate Cowboy, ever, because he's an amazing striker. He's also an amazing submission artist, and he's one of the few fighters that I've seen, as long as I've watched and the fights that I have watched, that he's amazing on his back, as far as defense, turning some of that into submissions. It's going to be an interesting fight, people. So some of his key wins are against Jeremy Stevens, Patrick Cote, and Eddie Alvarez. Like I said, I could pick some other ones. I know he's defeated Benson Henderson along with some other people now. Benson Henderson's, stock has dropped, obviously. But at the time, he was a good fighter. His key losses are to Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, and Jorge Masvidal, which those are people you can't hang your head to. Those are some amazing fighters, champions, or soon to be champions. Jorge Masvidal is, if you followed MMA, you know about Jorge. He came from Miami, famous for street fighting through Kimbo Slice. Got his chance in the UFC. Totally annihilated with probably one of the most amazing knockouts I ever seen of Ben Askren. Oh my God. A flying knee right out the gate, knocked him out cold. So he's got a lot of potential. So, the losses that Cowboys had, there's nothing to hang your head to. And he has nothing really to prove. Like I said, he's one of the greats. That championship eludes him. And I would love to see him go out with a title. But if he doesn't, it's, he's a UFC Hall of Famer through and through. He's going to be one of the greatest of all time. He's definitely, if he doesn't win a championship, he will be the greatest of all time to never win a title. And I know that's kind of a sucky title to have, the greatest to never win a championship, but I don't know of anybody that can argue that. Um, Again, like I said, it's going to be an amazing fight. I want to see, like I said, my biggest thing. So, Cowboys come off a couple losses in a row. And, a lot of people question, has he gotten to that point where he's slowing down? He's not the same Cowboy. I've heard that, from people, and there can be some truth to that. Like I said, you look at the amount of fights he's had in his career. His, like I said, 36-13 with no contest. He's had 50 fights going into his 51st fight. Uh, that's ridiculous. The amount of times he's been in the ring, and he never stops. I mean, where you have some fighters that want to fight once a year, twice a year. Cowboy, he'll fight you every 2-3 months. I think he fought 4 times in 2019 last year. That just shows you what kind of fighter he is. On the other hand, like I said, Connor, he's been away for a while. He hasn't fought since Khabib. I want to see what kind of condition Connor's going to be in. I'm very curious to that. Um, my head wants to pick Connor because I know what Connor can do. I've seen, but my heart's telling me to go with Cowboy. This is because I love Cowboy, man. He's probably one of my all-time favorite fighters in the UFC. Hoist Gracie, obviously. The Gracie family. Watching the old UFC fights when it was a tournament. Before it's kind of turned into the boxing format, different weight classes, divisions. So I go back a long time, but Cowboy, he's one of my favorite fighters, and I love him because he's so humble. He's very humble. If you ever watch any of the press conferences he's in, the pre-fight, he doesn't talk a lot of smack. He's a very workman-like mentality. He's just going to go in there. He's going to fight, win, lose, or draw. He's going to give it his all. So where you have the polar opposite of Cowboy with Connor McGregor, that's flashy, that talks a lot of crap, that does some stupid things, put on that act. And I don't know if it's an act. I think it might be real. That's just how Conor McGregor is. He's flashy, crazy, crap talking guy. So you have the polar opposites of each other, two different fighters. I'm going to go out on a limb on this one. I think Cowboy is going to beat Connor. Now, like I said, I could be wrong. Both of these guys have good chins. Both are good fighters. I just think with the amount of time that McGregor has been out, even though he's probably trained a lot leading up to this fight, you just can't replicate what Cowboy can do. You can't replicate that in sparring and training. His length, his takedown ability, his submission ability, his defense on his back. You can't. It's hard to simulate that. So I have Cowboy winning. I'd like to say he'd win by submission. I think if he's going to win, he's going to have to submit Connor. I don't think if it got to the cards, to the end of the five rounds, I think Connor might pull it out. But again, like I said, I don't know his state of conditioning. Where he's going to be at. I know he's going to be mentally prepared. We all know how Connor is. It's just a matter of has he lost anything since he's been off. So yeah, my pick on that one, I'm going with Cowboy. I'm going to say he's going to submit Connor middle of the third round. And we're going to see what happens with Connor after that. If Connor loses to Cowboy, that's not a devastating loss. You know, the only two losses that Connor's had has been respectable. Like I said, Nate Diaz, Khabib, who's just an animal. Those aren't bad losses. And if he lost to Cowboy, it's a respectable loss. I don't think Connor should be able to hang his head, and I don't think it's going to take anything away from Connor, because you're fighting a legend in the sport, and you lose to a legend. So there's really nothing to lose for either one of these guys. Now I do think if Connor does defeat Cowboy, this might be where Cowboy retires, and I'd hate to see that. I know he's been in the game a long time. I'd hate to see him, go out on a 3-fight losing streak. I'd love to see him retire. And there's a possibility if he beats Connor, he might retire, win, lose, or draw. But if he does, I'd love to see him go out with a win. I'd hate to see Cowboy, end his career with 3 straight losses. So at the end of the day, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, I've got Cowboy with the upset submission in the mid to late third round. This was a tough one for me to choose. Right now, I can't trust Connor McGregor being out the amount of time he has without fighting, and you're coming in fighting one of the greatest of all time in the game for your first fight back. That's a tough one, and you don't know where his head's at after that Khabib fight. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I got Cowboy Cerrone, third round submission, rear naked choke. I hope you guys like this. I know I went on a lot. This is my first MMA video, so I wanted to do more talking on this about what I see, what I think is going to happen. I do plan on doing a reaction video after the main event and the co-main event. Just a brief reaction to it, give you my thoughts. But like I said, I hope you guys like this, and if you would just hit the like and subscribe button. Give me your feedback, give me your comments. Feel free, and just let me know what you think, guys. But yeah, so this is UFC 246 McGregor versus Cowboy Cerrone, and Holly Holm versus Raquel Pennington, the co-main event. I think it's going to be a great one. Anyways, I hope you guys like it. Thanks, YouTube. I'll talk to y'all later.